All right, welcome back. So this is our session, our second session, step two. For those of you who are joining us, welcome back. For Randy and I, we just took a quick break, and it's very interesting to me because what's really alive in my environment right now is kind of the surrender process of just accepting things the way they are. We were talking about identifying what our expectations are. One of the expectations I have, which is causing me frustration at the moment, is being completely present in these kinds of meetings. Yeah, even though I have a son who's competing for my attention, and dealing with the shame and the guilt of trying to do this work but having it being underappreciated or underviewed. So from the under earners anonymous perspective, I'm kind of looking at my limitations, and there is an emotional charge there. So now we're going to go on to the second step, and I'm going to read what I my notes from the Under Earners Anonymous site, and then Randy, I'm going to ask you to put your spin on the second step. But the way it is worded on Under Earners Anonymous is come to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. So a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity is the wording. So I'm going to kind of leave that there on the table and let you take it from here, Randy. And what's your take on this? What is your update to the second step?
Yeah, so for those who didn't watch the first one, well, I'd like to answer this with a little bit of a story, like I did with the
Please.
powerlessness.
Mhm.
So the general challenge for most people on this step, at least those that I've had conversations with, it's the God aspect, power greater than ourselves and such. And I didn't struggle that. The word insanity was the word that bucked me. See, I had been going to the meetings and had the sobriety for about 3 years before I did the steps. So if you go to a meeting and when they're referencing the insanity of drinking, that lifestyle, that was no longer a challenge for me. I wasn't blackouting, wasn't blacking out anymore, type of stuff. So it was kind of irrelevant. And as I'm having this discussion with the man who was walking beside me as I'm going through the steps, he goes, "Yeah, Randy, but there's some things from your past that seem to still be bothering you."
Mm.
And again, I'm emotionally raw, and I'm just like, and we're not going to talk about those things today, Alan. And it's just like, yeah, I understand. I'm not. But do you see, we haven't even really got into any specifics, and already you got your guard up. There's something going on here that's, well, it's making your life harder than it probably needs to be. And if you do the rest of these steps, it'll probably be a little bit easier. Hence why my program's called Easier Ways. Doesn't mean life's easy, but it's easier when we don't have this kind of stuff that's floating in between our ears, stuff that's in our heart, again, that hole in the soul kind of stuff. When we're not striving for perfection, we just want wholeness. We want to be able to integrate the stuff that we've pushed down and been ashamed of, and be vulnerable, be someone who recovers humanity. But I digress. Is so Alan goes, look, seems like you've learned some lessons from what's happened in the past. And I said, oh, yeah, learn the hard way. He goes, okay. So why are you beating yourself up so much for learning a lesson? And there was a huge
Mm.
wow moment. How he reframed that for himself. So much of the stuff that I was ashamed of that I would never ever do again, if I could reframe it as a learning opportunity, and some lessons I had to repeat many times before I said no more. But again, if a person has begun this process, they have the awareness, they have the acknowledgement that there is something that they need help with, and they can't control this on their own as much as they want to, much as they've tried and such. That alone right there is a huge development thing, because again, it's you've learned something from all those challenges. You may feel like you're defeated and any other word that comes up with you and such. Just the acknowledgement that you've got this going on right now and you're seeking help from it means you've learned a lesson. So why are
Mm,
you beating yourself up so much for learning a lesson?
yeah.
Now, I was in person with someone. Typically, I get a lot of, I don't know, response to that because again, we're so certain of this stuff, and that's another thing as we start moving forward. It's an unlearning process. Back to this thing, you're not broken, you're human. You need to, the process is unlearning these ideas that no longer serve you. Okay. Again, that's really the at the heart of all this stuff, that we've come to certain beliefs about ourselves and the world that stuck because there was some value to it when it came into our life. Yes, don't do that. No, but because there's such agony involved with it now, and again, the unintended consequences behind this and such, I concluding that doesn't work for you anymore. So that's, and I, with that being said, I probably should read my adaptation of it. And it's, we came to believe, like all human beings, our power was limited and
Hmm.
we needed to let go of ideas that no longer serve us
Hmm.
and learn from others. So
Yeah.
it's understanding our limitations, embracing the wisdom of letting go and learning.
Yeah.
Um, this really isn't anything that hasn't been talked about in the wisdom traditions, uh, especially though the Eastern traditions and such. If you know the Buddhism, the little bit that I know, again, they talk about the cause of all suffering is clinging.
Yeah.
So it's learning when somebody says, "How do I let go?" It's like, well, it's no longer as important as it once was.
Yeah.
Now, how do you make something not as important? Well, that's having a more complete understanding of it is. So we've taken incomplete information or misunderstandings, and we've, because humans don't like uncertainty, we've filled in the gaps. Kind
Yes.
of came up with some narratives and stuff of this is just how it is. This person isn't returning my text because I pissed them off. Have no idea really what's going on, why they're not returning it, but we've got a conclusion in our mind, and typically it's one that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, in regards to, again, this thing came to believe a power greater than us could restore us to sanity. The power greater than ourselves can be a collective understanding, the
Mm,
wisdom
I
of
like
the
that.
group, those that have, with their shared, the synergy in the room, their shared experience, their strength, their hope. That hey, look, if that guy who's suffering or who has once suffered like I am suffering right now, his suffering is no longer as intense. He's found a solution. Maybe if I listen to what this person has to share, maybe
Yeah.
there's something inside of this experience, this healing this person has that I can apply to myself. If they, kind of one of the few things where pride served me and stuff, it's like, well, if that guy can do it, I can do it too.
Right.
So that's kind of my gist of the second step.
Yeah, yeah. And what's alive for me, coming at it from the spiritual perspective, the interspiritual and the interfaith perspective, is that when we sense a power that is greater than ourselves, that are outside of ourselves, there it kind of reinforces this almost like this hierarchy of shame. Like I feel ashamed that I'm not as good as the power that is above me or the power that is greater than me. And that can be, that can really kind of mess with your mind quite a bit as well too. And then it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that I need to be restored to sanity because I'm not whole. And like you said, we're broken, we're not broken, we're human. So what is really alive for me as far as that step, and why I'm really resonating quite a bit with your language, is that we are in this together. We are interdependent. I think for, especially in westernized culture, we seek to be independent, or we have this rugged individualism. But when we're kind of connected to the interdependency of each other, that, to me, that is kind of like I guess if you want to think of it as a greater power, but it's a more to me it's a more complete kind of like a complete power. Like I mean, you're here on this earth to do what you're going to do. I'm here to do what I'm going to do. If we get together, it's a beautiful thing. And if we can't, this is a Gestalt prayer. If we can't, it can't be helped, and that's okay. So yeah, so to me, that's almost like a restoration of sanity in being able to see the interdependency. Because I can debate till the cows come home about about financial systems or economic systems. But at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is being able to surrender to the greater wisdom between us. Not my wisdom, not just your wisdom, but what is the greater emergence of wisdom between us is how I'm interpreting
Yes.
the second step at the moment. So yeah, yeah, so yeah. So what's alive for you in,
Yeah.
in response to that, Randy?
Well, I'm remembering I didn't finish the story, or I left out an important part. So Alan explained to me, it's like, so my insanity was wishing for a different past.
Wow. Mm,
Okay. So again, you learned this lesson. Why are you beating yourself up so much for learning a lesson?
mhm.
Your insanity, Randy, is wishing for a different past. And that's insane. What's
Yeah.
happened has happened. It's how you relate to this right now. Again, is reframing it as a lesson. Um, yeah. So that was really, really important to me. Again, is understanding that again, the reframing is it's a different perspective. I'm coming at it from a different angle. The unlearning is a different perception, a different understanding. So when we talk about higher power, one of the ways that helped me again to the change in the language is a higher consciousness.
Mhm.
So if we think about, if you climbed up on the top of a building, okay, you're able to look out, you're elevated 15, 20 feet. You have a much broader perspective of what's around you than when you were at ground level.
Yeah.
So similar again in a consciousness level, it could be spiritual, but it's just a matter of having a more mature, more complete understanding of a situation. I have a higher understanding, a higher consciousness
Mhm.
level of what's going on.
Yeah.
So again, why here again, I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in God, but I know for sticking point for a lot of people is the God element
Mhm.
with it. And that's part of the language is to understand these are our universal, self-evident principles. As again, you move forward, yeah, it's like, wait a minute, what happened here, again, I can't change.
Yeah.
And I need to accept this. I need to surrender to this. Yes, it sucked a lot. And if I could have done it any other way, I would have done it. But that's how it went down. And I realized today what happened 10, 20 years ago is still affecting me in a way, the thorn in my side type of thing, a pebble in your shoe
Mhm.
and such. And now I'm acknowledging that I'm not the one who can remove the thorn. I'm not the one who can take off my shoe and there's something going on. I've tried everything else. So humility is a huge factor in here and open-mindedness to consider things that you may have resisted, denied, doubted, outright said this is balderdash. Back to kind of the spiritual thing of like going, I'm sorry, I don't believe in a God. That's foolish. That's just mythology, whatever, type of paradigm you're coming at this with, or spirituality with. Again, just using it as an understanding is one. This does not mean necessarily it's a religious perspective. I speak of non-religious spirituality
Right.
and understanding there's a vibrancy, there's the chi, again, going back to Eastern things, there's a life force in all of us. There's an energy that again that can be scientifically proven. You
Yeah.
don't need to have a master's degree to understand that when they put electrodes on a person's brain or on their chest and stuff, that there's machines that can pick this stuff up. There's energy within us. They, no one's ever told me where they found the battery for that energy. Okay.
Right.
And whether you want to call that your soul, your spirit, or whatever, or just life, again, there is something within us that allows us to be inspired, to have insights, to do life in a way that is much more than being a robot. And that type of vibrancy is what recovery is. I just heard a person recently talked about recovery is recovering courage.
Mm,
So another thing is we're hearing, starting to get deeper into this stuff. It's real common because you're going into uncharted terrain, at least for the individual, to have uncertainty. Uncertainty is scary. It's like,
mm,
what's my life going to be like if I'm no longer living this lifestyle? If I'm no longer drinking, all my friends drink. I'll
mm,
have no friends. I
mm,
don't want to live with no friends. Well, talk to people who's been sober for a while. It's like, well, your real friends, they'll hang around. I mean, my best friend I've known since kindergarten, John and stuff, he still drinks. You know, went out to the bar last night. He has people over the house that drink and stuff. We're still great friends and such. The fact that I don't drink with him really didn't change anything other than I don't drink stuff. So again, now are there some people that we hung out with and drank with that don't want to talk with me anymore? Yeah, guess that was the one thing we had in common. And gee, again, when it's not personal, if my relationship is solely based upon the fact that we get drunk together, that's a pretty shallow relationship.
mm,
So if
mm,
you're concerned losing relationships with people over really shallow things, again, that higher consciousness, once again, you take two steps back and you're like, yeah, why am I going to be worried about not hanging around with somebody that all they care about is the fact that I'm buying them drinks, you
mm.
know? So that type of thing is very pragmatic and does not necessarily need to get woo-woo spirituality. Again, it's just a higher understanding. It's a higher consciousness that comes as you move through this and you have your epiphanies, your insights, your wow moments. And I assure you, if you go through this process, there will be a few of those happening.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's alive for me too. Going along with that observation about the loneliness that comes with it. Something that came up for me is, sometimes people might be thinking, if I'm not in business with someone, or if I'm not making money, from this friendship or from this relationship, you know, then what is it really about? What is it the real value in that as well too? And what came up for me as you were saying that about the insanity being wishing for a different past, or expecting a different past. I can really relate to that, because sometimes the story I tell myself, and this is tying back into the ability to earn, or to earn a living. I mean, I keep thinking to myself, if only I was born into a more influential family, or into a family with more connections, then these ideas that I'm trying to put out to the world, they would have taken off like that. And the reality of it is, well, I don't know if that's true. Because I had to go through this experience of really being able to discern and understand, you know, where values, where when we're in interdependent relationships, when we're in friendships, what is the real value outside of money? Because when we put value on something outside of ourselves and not on the intrinsic value, that's when the system gets corroded. I mean, that's when that's when we create systems that can enable what we're seeing right here, with the Epstein files, or with the wars that we're seeing here, and the poverty. So yeah, I'm really resonating with, at the moment, with just how valuable this time is together, in this living library conversation, where we're really listening to each other, where we're really kind of putting together, what's most important, what's most meaningful, because that's really the first step on how to change the system from within. And that's how I feel like we are tapping into that greater power, but we're doing it together. Okay, so we do the play that you've seen about suicide and bullying. We say, there's 8 billion people in this world. You're never meant to do anything alone. And when we start to and that's what I wanted to say also at the beginning of this particular segment as well too, how to ask for help. So I would probably, for someone watching this section, it's I would probably ask, have you identified what your needs are? Is there anyone you can go to ask for help? And if that doesn't feel right at the moment, what is it going to take for you to be able to ask for help? Or what do you need, to be able to ask for the help that you need? So yeah, so that's where I feel that could be the interactive portion of this segment, Randy. How do those questions land for you about asking for help?
Well, and certainly, yeah, I had a very quid pro quo might be the way it's like I never helped anybody unless I was getting something out of it.
Mhm,
So again, but this is just my worldview that why would anybody ever help me without getting something out of it?
mhm,
There'd be an indebtedness
mhm.
to this. And I certainly did not want to be indebted to this person.
Yeah.
One, again, for what I know, it might ask something that I'm not capable of delivering, might be exploited and such that I didn't realize at the time how codependent I was at the time. But yeah, that was really scary. Now, also, let's be very realistic. Not everybody is trustworthy in this world. So they have to earn their trust and
Mhm,
such. But there are little things, again, in having a support community in a group and such. You only need to share what you're comfortable with sharing. I've been to many meetings where people say pass when it was their time. If it was going around like clockwise around the group, everybody in the group shares.
mhm,
Came to my turn and stuff. No, I'm just going to listen today. Never once has any I've ever been in a meeting. Now, maybe there might be some, but I've never been in a meeting where somebody says, "No, you're sharing, bud," kind of stuff. No, and if they do, again, you can just say, "No, I'm not okay with sharing." So you don't have to do anything that isn't right for you. You're not ready to open up and be vulnerable with someone that's perfectly normal. And again, you don't need to. But there are times when somebody, for myself, it was in a meeting where a guy was sharing how he wanted to take a shovel to his wife's head.
mhm,
I forget exactly why he was so angry at her. Part of my shame is because my wife, for years was telling me to stop drinking. That bitch. It should
mhm,
just shut up and leave me alone and let me get drunk after work. Is that too much?
mhm,
But there's part of me that felt great shame because she loved me and or loves me and cared enough about me that she was bringing this up. She wasn't going to let me destroy myself. And I knew that this was out of love. This was not for any other reason that she was trying to get me to stop. And I felt ashamed. Again, back to my expectations. I should be able to stop and stuff. So being in a meeting and hearing someone else who, by the way, happened to have, I forget, 7, 8 years of sobriety. Here I'm in like a month in, you know, and this guy's going, I'm angry, so angry with my wife, I want to kill her. And I'm not joking. I
mhm,
am very vividly can see ways that I will kill this woman for doing these
mhm,
things. And
mhm,
everybody's laughing in the room. And as I said in the previous, it's a sign of healing is when you can laugh at this stuff that be ashamed.
mhm,
I don't know about anybody else in the room. I knew the guy was very sincere in his anger, but also I knew very much that there was people in the room much like so I was like, oh, I'm not the only one in the room who's felt this way.
mhm,
And that was huge, huge for me to know that I'm not the only one who carries this stuff with them. And
mhm,
again, coming back to you're not broken, you're human. It doesn't mean that this is exclusive with whatever your 12-step group is. Again,
mhm,
for my drinking, people have that type of resentment towards other people that have tried to love on them, try to be kind and stuff. And it does not necessarily make them defective. Again, they're human. There was a misunderstanding and there was incomplete understanding of the situation. Adler says that all problems boil down to being interpersonal problems. This is just part of human condition. So to have somebody that you can, I don't know, feel comfortable enough to say where I'm not okay, just that much and stuff. And then again, you share what's appropriate. You don't maybe need to talk to them about the fact that you're really planning on how to poison your wife and end her because she's telling you to stop drinking or whatever. the kind of stuff. You don't need to share that with anybody unless you feel that it's appropriate. But like, maybe I better share it or I really will. And I don't want to go to jail for
Mm,
murdering my wife,
mm,
tongue in cheek, trying to joke about this and stuff.
yeah.
But my point is, you will know. I have faith that there is a competency in every human being. When it comes down to it, when you can calm down your mind, when the emotional charges are not as strong. This is kind of back to, again, taking the 10 deep breaths or 5 deep breaths and stepping down when you're not in the heat of everything. And it's called being present.
Hmm.
We can, this is safe. This is a person I can share with.
Hmm.
Okay. And if something down the road and stuff comes out where you find out otherwise this person is okay, then you deal with it appropriately. Guess what? Yeah, you know what? You're not somebody that I want to be in a relationship at all, let alone someone I'm sharing things. I'm not dependent upon your approval and doing what you say in codependency and such. Not to get too far off the thing is you don't need to share. You don't even need to go to meetings and stuff right now. Is just to understand that if you're wanting help,
Hmm.
again, you have this very sincere desire for change to happen. It is possible. So
Yeah.
you're recovering hope and you're recovering courage to move forward and do some things that you haven't wanted to do, hadn't been willing to go to the meetings, haven't been willing to say I'm not okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can be very intimidating, and it just might even take just showing up and not participating to be able to feel safe enough or to feel the trust enough to be able to, to be able to be in those to be in that situation where you're starting to uh, express what it is that is still a highly charged, like with the man and his wife. That's a very highly charged situation, and there has to be a very safe container to be able to express that. So I guess my question would be, to anyone listening to this and who's still with us here after this conversation, what are the conditions that you need to be able to trust, that you can be in an environment and express yourself honestly and with authenticity, to be able to help yourself, which is also role modeling how to help others. But Randy, how did that sense of trust or that safety emerge in you, where you felt that you could continue to show up and that you could continue to be present without checking out, especially when the topic matter is very highly charged.
It took a long time. It really truly did. That's why, again, I said what I just shared
Yeah.
and such. And expectations. Other people in these meetings are talking about how they share everything with their sponsor, your mentor and stuff, the person that you've got this horizontal relationship with. I couldn't do it, and I felt less than, type of stuff. There was some shame there. So it took time. I believe the shape of that journey is first you have belief, then it eventually slowly evolves into faith, and eventually there's trust. So the story that explained that arc to me was the parachute, the guy in a parachute. Okay, or I'll say, I have a belief that if I ever put a parachute on my back and I get up in an airplane and I jump out, I believe that the parachute will open and I'll land safely. Okay, do you see how that's an idea? It's a belief. Okay, and I believe in it strongly enough. I have faith that I actually do the action. The faith is jumping out of the airplane and and then landing safely. Now, I've never jumped out of an airplane myself. But I know people that have, and they have a really good time. Do they want to jump out of the plane all the time? Hundreds of jumps and stuff there. I know one guy that's an instructor. Um, but they will also share that it took them a long time to get to that level of trust, that level of enjoyment. The anxiety and apprehension involved with doing it, that again, it's different for everyone. Again, you may have a relationship with someone where it just clicks and next thing you know, you just verbally vomit all over. You let it all out. A therapist, counselor, whatever it may be, a priest, it's just like, oh my God, I needed to get that off my chest. And it was a great hour-long session, 2 hours, however long, and stuff. But it might wind up being, again, these, like, you're talking with this person, and you start saying, it's like, I don't know. And what do you mean I don't know? And said, like, well, no, I'll be sure. One, I don't know what you're asking. And two, I don't know if I want to really open up and share that with you as well. But again, when it's not as personal, understanding that if you are sitting with a confidant, okay, you believe that conversation has the possibility of helping you, being the solution that you seek. So you have belief, you have recovered hope that you can transcend this situation that's been causing such agony, and stuff. So you have belief, and eventually, if you continue with it, again, if evidence prove that this is something that it's making progress with. You're not stagnating. And again, there's a saying, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. We rarely will get results overnight. Um, but again, if there's intuition that, what this, I think this was helpful and I'll come back and do it again. Eventually, if it is something that is right for you, there will be those wow moments, those epiphanies, the things that I've shared with you, those moments where it's like, oh my God, I am so glad. Thank you. That type of stuff. And we'll get into it more so. But why I'm doing this conversation here is because of people have helped me. And I naturally said, how do I ever repay you for this? Well, again, this is typical in the vertical relationship of the world and such. Thank you for helping me. How do I pay you back? Well, in a horizontal relationship, at least in recovery world, it's like, you don't necessarily help people to stay sober, although that has validity, but really, truly for myself, I do this out of gratitude. My healing is not for myself alone. And when you can find a peer, somebody that's gone through this and go, yeah, I see myself in you and I remember what it was like. And if I could help you, just like somebody helped me, that gives the pain, the agony that I went through a little more value. Again, this wasn't all in vain. That's why we are helpers. Again, speaking for myself, why I'm a helper, and I know other people that have this attitude. So that's another thing is like, if you're wondering, is like, wait a minute, people are nice just to be nice. They're going to do this and not ask anything for you. Well, I hope someday if you go through this process that you'll be like many that I know that, yeah, yeah, you're doing this to help another soul because someone helped you and you're paying it forward.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things where, gosh, if it was more common in society, again, this hierarchy, these under earners and such, um, debtors anonymous and such, there's this vertical situation where a person's worth and value is directly correlating to how much money they have.
Yeah.
Because I have more money, I'm worth more in the world. And again, there it is synonymous and such here. But our intrinsic value as a human being, I don't care if you're Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, or whatever, whoever's got all these zeros in your bank account and stuff like that. I don't necessarily see you as having more intrinsic value than me. I miss up. Now, also for the person who has no bank account and can do nothing for anyone in this world. They're living at a level of hand to mouth. They're doing their best just to stay alive, and let alone that can they help someone else. I don't see you being less than me either.
Mhm.
But again, this took me a long, long time to see this horizontal relationship type of thing.
Yeah.
So again, if you're listening in on this stuff, but know that this is the kind of stuff we get that we, aren't really necessarily seeking in the beginning. But it transcends into all areas of my life. In the workplace, when I'm dealing with people that aren't necessarily in the recovery world and stuff, I'm not intimidated sitting across the table from my boss or somebody that's got a lot of money and power kind of stuff. People I work for, yeah, they've got big fancy car. They've actually got here not too far from us by Dollywood, where I live in Tennessee and stuff. They have a museum of their exotic cars. They have a jet. Okay. The company probably owns the jet and stuff. But again, they got a lot of money. They've got 11 stores across the southeast, and so they've been very financially successful. But I don't see necessarily any reason to feel intimidated to be around. One, they're not are nice people and stuff, but I hope if you're listening into this and stuff, money does not determine someone being better than someone else, or lack of money making you less than someone else. This is something the world has come in unwritten rules. But if you can go into a recovery community or a safe space like we've been describing here and stuff, I think you'll understand that we are much more alike than we are different once we get these ideas again. I talk about unlearning and stuff. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's my 2 cents.
I want to add on that, and then we'll wrap this section up here. But yeah, to add on to that as well too, if somebody is watching this and they're participating in a living library or in a time bank, they're participating in the systems change on how money will flow horizontally. We are in a system, and that's part of the acceptance of this, is we are in a system that runs on that vertical model, but what we're doing is we're kind of building the plane as we're flying it, and this is a part of how to uh, uh, do systems change, create a new system where the flow is horizontally. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So yeah, just closing questions for someone who might be watching this. Just to recap some of the things that came up for me during this particular conversation. First of all, is how do you ask for help? What is it going to take for you to feel safe enough to ask for help? How do you move into deeper trust? And if you're not willing to entertain that question yet, what conditions come up for you? What conditions do you need to start to move into deeper trust? So those are some of the questions that I would ask somebody watching this for the first time to consider and to entertain in future groups around just this section in step two. But Randy, anything you would like to add or complete this session with to keep the conversation going with someone who may be watching this for the first time?
Well, the action step I would suggest is, again, do you have hope that your life can be better? Do you
Mm,
do you think it's realistic to think that you can have a fresh start in life?
mm,
Now, if you come out with a no, not a chance kind of stuff, understand that this framework of the 12 steps has helped, no exaggeration. Currently, AA alone says that they have over 2 million people worldwide that are members of this. This
mm.
has helped millions of people, regardless of your society, your situation, your personality, whatever, and stuff. Again, the rich, the poor, all kinds and stuff. This process has allowed people to have a fresh start. Again, that's if you say, no, I'm different. I can't do this. You don't understand if that's coming up. This process is helping people like myself. Why I know those questions, or those answers and such, that resistance and stuff. Well, you're different, or I'm different, kind of stuff. No, again, there is more similarities than there are differences when it comes to our nature as
Yeah,
humans, and we'll get into those more as we go along. But yeah, I guess right now is the question to ask yourself to contemplate is, do I believe that I can have a fresh start in life?
that's a beautiful question, and we will conclude here for this section. And keep on the lookout for further steps. We'll be recording steps 3 and 4 here in the next couple weeks. So thank you, Randy.